Hello, everyone. Ah. Hi, I'm Larry Gray, and I'm going to talk to you about building strong and sustainable open source projects. But you should know from reading the description of this talk, it won't be a normal talk about just open source itself. I'm going to tell you a couple stories, quite interesting, and they all center around road trips, right? And the reason, I guess I'll take a step back and tell you why this is important to me. So after 20 years of working as a biomedical scientist, I got introduced to open source and it changed my life. It changed my career. I'm no longer a scientist. I guess I'm always a scientist, but I switched careers, and I became a part of a wonderful community that I was hoping other projects could adopt and learn from. So, but how does this even relate to a road trip? We all have been on road trips. Everyone in this room probably has been on a road trip, right? So, but I don't think you've been on an epic road trip. So the story begins, my friend Jacob and I were finishing our summer internships at a university called Cal State Fullerton. And we planned on, at the end of the summer, to take a road trip to Vancouver, British Columbia. So we're located down here at the very end of this map. So we're in Orange County, California. And Vancouver is really far north, right? And so at the end of the summer, we decided we're going to celebrate this end by going. And what we decided to do, the hiccup that we had is we had very little money. Like, we literally had enough money to get halfway there and back. And so, but no, hear me out. We were expecting a paycheck, right? So the thought was, all right, we'll start our journey, we'll get paid, and we'll complete this journey. Obviously, you can see on the screen it says Fullerton, California to Eureka, California. We never made it out of the state of California. But it gets better. So we decide to leave, but on simultaneously, what's happening here, if you see the blue line, that blue line is our path to Eureka, and it's up the 5 freeway in California. The gray line is a route going up the Pacific Coast Highway, right, up there. So just happens my parents are leaving to go on a trip to Portland, Oregon, about the same time that we're leaving. They're going up, they get to San Francisco, they're going to take a train from San Francisco to Portland, Oregon, and that was the trip that they're planning. We leave like a day or two apart from each other. Nothing's going on there. So Jacob and I go, and our first stop is San Francisco. We stay at one of my fraternity brothers' house, Will, and we stay there at night, and we get up in the morning, and I check my bank balance, no money, right? And so one thing that we also noticed on this trip is that once we started traveling, we didn't take into account for food and water into our calculations, so we had even less money than we thought we did. And so we leave Will's house, and we're traveling towards Eureka, and I'm driving, and Jacob says, "Hey, that looks like your brother in the car beside us." I was like, "No." We're like 900 miles away from our house. That's not my brother. And I look over, it's my little brother. And so I flagged him down, and we're thinking, we're eating beef jerky at this point. That's what we're consuming. And my dad gets out the car, and he's just tapping his watch. It's like, what? And he's shaking his head, and he looks at me and he's like, "Larry, it's dinner time, and I'm always certain you'll be around, no matter where I'm at," right? Because during college, the only time I saw my parents was to go steal food from them, right? And so they take us out to dinner, so we have food for the night, and we take their leftovers. It's at that point, and we will not, I never told this story to my parents at all, And they like, okay, let's go back to our hotel room. And I remember my dad asking me, so where are you going to stay at? And I was like, well, we'll find a place. We're going to sleep in my car. And so we get to the hotel room, and my dad goes in, he comes back out, and he has a scowl on his face, and he's upset. It's like, I don't want to stay at this place. You know, it's bad. You know, we're going to find another hotel. Do you guys want to stay here? It's like, oh. Now we have a place to stay. And so so we stayed there the night, and we're outside, and my friend Jacob is smoking a cigarette, and we hear some loud music. It's like, okay, let's go check this out. And there's a house party going on, so there are people everywhere. So we thought we'd just roll into the house party and hang out. So we meet the host, and he's wonderful. He's really nice. We hang out, we get drinks and food and everything else that we need at this party, and we leave at like 3 a.m. in the morning. And before we left, the host was like, hey, come back tomorrow, we have a picnic. You can come to this picnic. And it was like, okay, you know, we really don't have money to leave, but we'll do this. And so we go over to this party, and it's amazing. Like, there are people from different ethnicities, different cultures. There's people, just really, really amazing moments. And one of the things that I remember distinctly is someone playing a guitar, someone playing a didgeridoo. It was just, you can't make this stuff up. So we stayed there, and at the end of the night, he asked, the host asked, you know, do you have a place to stay? And we're like, well, we had a hotel room, now we don't. And it's like, stay here. So this goes on for like 3 or 4 days. Like, we're just hanging out, picnicking every day, and meeting cool people. And so we do this. And then finally, Jake was like, you know what, we probably need to go back home. You know, it's been over a week. You know, we're not going to make it to Vancouver. And so we head back. Like, obviously, that morning, I checked again. Every morning, I checked to see if we got the money, right? But never, no money. So we get back to San Francisco, and we're hanging out with Will, my fraternity brother, again. And I check my phone, and the money comes through, finally. But we're at the end of this vacation, and so we go out that night, and we celebrate. Not only did we celebrate, I bought beers for the entire bar. So, and here are pictures of Eureka. This is me celebrating, singing. So, but how does any of this relate to building strong and sustainable open source projects? There are what I found to be certain ingredients that were necessary to build a strong open source project. So in the story, we embarked on a road trip to Vancouver, British Columbia. Our purpose and vision were to explore new places and have new experiences and have fun. So we wanted to take a break from our internships and enjoy a journey filled with surprises, right? But in order to build a successful open source project, you need to have clear purpose and vision, right? This ensures that everyone involved understands the goals and the objectives, and also it also allows you to make better decision-making or guide your decision-making. So that's one of the first ingredients. So as I told you, when we were at this party, we met people from everywhere. Like, it was all faiths, everything that you can imagine. And it made it the journey memorable. And it can simply be applied to how we want to build our open source projects, and so that they embrace openness and diversity. So, because we want unique perspectives, right? And we also want creative solutions, and that's what diversity and openness brings, right? So, be open to unexpected surprises. So Jacob and I had a surprise almost at every turn of this trip, right? Run into my family on the outskirts of Eureka, crashing a party, making new friends. All of this was unexpected, right? But these unexpected surprises help you grow and evolve as a project, right? It could be as simple as getting new contributors or dealing with issues, right? These unexpected surprises are always good for our projects. So learn from failure and keep pushing forward. So I think we can all agree that the road trip started differently than planned. We were low on funds and had to adjust our plans accordingly. So, but for projects, this all means that you stay focused on your goals, right? And you remain resilient. So this is how you overcome your failures and keep going. And you saw me do this. You saw me singing in a bar. Celebrate success together, right? And this should be your milestones or just new contributors, right? Shared ownership and pride is the product of sharing achievements. So if you want to make sure that you're working with people that feel a sense of ownership and take pride in what you do, make sure you celebrate your successes together. And be willing to take risks. Who in this room think I took a risk when I took that drive? Everyone. But we didn't let the lack of funds or my poor math. I'm a biologist, not a mathematician. So we took a risk and hit the road anyway. So similarly with open source projects, you might not always have the answers or the resources, but you need to make calculated risks, right? So most of you, I think, would call me, I have a high level of positivity about me. But the positive attitudes and willingness to embrace surprises, they were key to our journey, right? But as a project, these are the things, or this is the thing that will help you build relationships and overcome obstacles. I truly believe that being positive helps. So we're going to switch gears just to no longer parallel the road trip, but just some actual things that you need to do when you're running an open source project. Build a strong governance model. This is important because it leads to effective management and transparency in your decision-making process, and it also builds trust amongst your contributors. All right. Collaboration and communication are also critical. And so you need to create spaces for discussion. So we're Slack, forums, what other place is needed in order to help you grow and communicate and know that you're on the same page. Clear documentation. I thought I would never say that I was all about documentation. But until I started working on this project and I realized there were several layers to documentation. So you had the user level, so you had tutorials, you had guides, user guides and things like that help the user become familiar and use your project. Then you had the contributor guide, right, to get contributors into your project and working so that they can be a part of your community. And then you have code documentation that helps the contributors that are there to stay up on top of things and be able to do it. So this is almost essential for you to have a successful project, that you meet each and every one of these needs. I like this one. I don't know how many people have been burnt out on open source, but it is definitely real. The way that we combat it at my project is that we develop something called semesters. Like for 3 months, every 3 months, you can sign up for a position within the project. It could be a contributor, it could be a maintainer, it could be what we call a coordinator. But during that 3-month period, you dedicate your time to that. And you don't have to enroll the next one. Like, you have no obligation to continue and work all the time, because that's the problem. In open source, you feel that you're alone and you have to work all the time and keep these projects going. But we built into our system is that we're going to reduce burnout by setting these intentional breaks in the project, and it works very well. So, keep an active and engaged community. This involves creating a welcoming environment where contributors feel valued, supported, and empowered to contribute. And so this ultimately will lead to motivation by your contributors to engage in your work. So now we get to our second story. I have 2 epic stories. So this story is quite interesting because it doesn't happen in the United States, but it's about me trying to get from one place to another. So I wanted to take holiday in Tasmania, Australia, and my plan was to fly into the city at the top called Launceston, right? And from Launceston, I was going to take a bus all the way to the capital called Hobart, right? And along the way, I was going to go to the coastal towns and visit and do this. And so the first day, I left Launceston and I went to a city called St. Helens. And so at St. Helens, I stayed at a hostel, and I met this Nepalese guy named Johnny. So Johnny and I decided to go explore St. Helens and the nearby stuff. So this is Johnny and me, all right? This is 20 years ago. So Johnny and I are exploring things, and we go to Billabong Bay, which is this beautiful beach. We hang out all day, and we just have a blast, right? So Johnny and I get really close, like really quickly. Like, this is my buddy, right? And so I was like, at the end of the day, I have to take my bus. I'm going to Hobart. Nice to meet you. Goodbye. And he was like, brother. I was like, yes. We don't take the bus around here. What are you talking about? He said, we're going to hitchhike. I was like, not me. So, but I'm easily influenced. So, so we actually decided when we went out to the highway, and I put my thumb out, and this old lady pulls up in a Bentley and offers us a ride. And I'm astonished. And it's like, this lady is so trusting, and she must feel really safe, right? And so we get in the car, and she talks to us and just tells us about her life. And we go down. She drops us off at the next coastal town. And this continues to happen all the way to Hobart, right? So we get to Hobart, and I'm staying at Johnny's place. And Johnny and I don't exchange information. I'm thinking, I'll never see this guy ever again. He's in Australia. I don't write postcards. I don't write letters. So we go to, I fly back to mainland Australia, and I told a friend, I was like, you will not, I called her name's Anjali. And so Anjali, I told her, like, you have to come to Tasmania. I had this amazing experience. They had this community that had safety, trust. There was like this whole entire network of people that made up this amazing community, right? And so she was like, yeah, she's like me. She's like, yeah, it didn't need much convincing. She's like, I'm down. So we go, we do the same exact thing. People are giving us places to stay, giving us food, taking us out on their boats. It's everything you can imagine happening on the trip happens. So, and since she's not here to do this, and we've been friends for almost 30 years,
I remember feeling such a sense of like divine synchronicity in the sense that we happened to stumble across so many amazing people and places and at exactly the right time and exactly the most auspicious way. And so there was something about that that felt so special to me about that trip. It's not like we had some elaborate itinerary planned and we're following a detailed, right, map or schedule that we had already plotted out. It's like we were open to possibilities and what might be available to us, and then everything seemed, as I remember, to fall into place so wonderfully. And so there's something about that, in particular, when I look back on that trip, that feels both unique and also just what a blessing, right? Like such a...
So she remembered, I didn't make it all up, there was someone else there. All right, so Anjali and I go on, we visit places like the Blue Tier Rainforest, and we hang out and do some great things. But as we were traveling down to Hobart, the last person that picked us up was a college student, right? And so this college student offered us when we got there, it's like, hey, you have a place to stay tonight, you can stay with us. And I remember it was late at night, and we're driving, and I'm thinking, this place looks quite familiar, right? So we get to the house, and I was like, I'm sure, for some reason, this is deja vu, like I've been here before. And so I go to sleep that night, I hear a knock on the bedroom door, and the door opens. Hey, brother, it's Johnny. And so, obviously, I was at Johnny's, his roommate was who picked us up. And so, me being me is like, I didn't take his information. It's like, yeah, I'm going back to the States. So I head back to the States. And 8 months later, I was like, I really want to go back to Australia. I wasn't going to go to Tasmania. I was just going to go back and visit some friends in Australia. And this is when flight was really cheap, so I could actually afford to go. I get there, and I remember one day we're sitting at a cafe, when I'm just having coffee, and I hear, hey, brother. Mind you, it's 8 months later, and I'm in Melbourne, Australia, far, far, far away from Tasmania. And I turn around, and it's Johnny. So I do take Johnny's information this time. Sadly, I lost it. Oh, yeah. But that's the second epic trip. So now, how does this pertain to open source projects? I think what we left off at was talking about having engaged and active communities. There are things that projects can do in order to have engaged communities. And so I just wanted to list those things off so that you would know if you're on a project, you have some ideas of how you can gain exposure and increase in or maintain your contributors. So the first is attend conferences. So what you want to do at most tech conferences, you have open source sprints, you can give a lightning talk, you can get at PyCon, I know this, you can get an open software source software booth. So if you're a beginning project and you want a booth, you can go get a booth, all right? So give talks at local meetups. So meet locals, and the benefit of this is that you get to meet locals and get project exposure. Simple, go to meetup.com. Do not do what I do. Do not join all the meetups. Take your time and get to know each group. So you can also host community hackathons. So what ended up happening with my project, we were kind of all located in Washington, D.C. area, and so we can meet in person quite a bit. But as the years went on, we all moved to different places, and we needed a mechanism for us to be able to get together and have that feeling of working all at the same time. So we started doing these community hackathons where we bring in contributors, core contributors and maintainers into a session for like 3 hours, and we just work together. And what this ends up doing, it enhances the sense of community. And so this could be in-person, virtual, but these are ways to stay engaged. So this might be unique. Develop courseware. So I'm an adjunct professor at Georgetown University, and one of the things that we do for our data science program is to incorporate our project, our open source project, into the curriculum, right? And so now we have students that are champions for our project. So if you can get the opportunity, you can do this through university, you can do this through online education platforms, but this is a great way to provide educational material for your users. So sit on panels. So if you ever get the chance, this is a great way for project exposure, and this generally comes as an outgrowth of participating in the community, in your local community. So submit a conference talk. This is a great way to share your passion. I know that our project, we've had plenty of conference talks, but it's a great way to get other people excited about what you're doing. Just select the appropriate conference, and I tell you that from experience, and review previous proposals so you know what is kind of expected. You can start an internship. So one of the things that I truly believe is that we should be fostering the growth of others. And we did this through Google Summer of Code. So we brought in interns to work on our project, and it benefited them as well as us to have extra hands on the project. When I first started with my open source project, what I did was write blog articles. We sat around at a big table, and we just start typing, and we would go over each one, the other's work. We would give them ideas, and it was all to show in practical settings how our project works in the wild. And this was great. It was a great exercise for us, but it provided more content for our users. And we've written books, and we've written papers about our project. So it increases exposure. These things increase exposure. And don't worry, this is a lot of stuff. This just didn't happen over. So I started this project back in 2016, right? And it's taken us like 8-9 years to do all of this. So don't be worried that you have to do all this tomorrow. So I say provide mentorship, because this is quite different than an internship. So I really believe that there's a benefit to you to be a mentor, right? You get to listen, you get to give advice, and provide access to your social network. So if you ever get a chance and you see one of my other talks, it's talking about building social capital. And I truly believe that helping each other gain access to the networks that we have is going to help them and help their careers grow, and that we should see each other as a community that wants to help one another. And so so today you should definitely introduce yourself to someone else and connect on LinkedIn and try to build out your networks. So anyone in the room familiar with NumFocus? Okay. So I'm on the board of NumFocus. And it's a great organization. It's a nonprofit that sponsors open source projects. So if you're in the Python world, we're talking about NumPy, Pandas, all these big projects that they provide some sort of support. So as a project, you can join NumFocus either as an affiliate or as a sponsored mentorship, membership. So this increased exposure. They have small development grants. So if you're trying to fund your web pages or get web page design, you want to do documentation, you want to translate it to a different language, all that type of stuff can be paid for through these development grants. They also provide financial management for bigger projects that receive grants or anything like that. And it's a great way to network with other projects. So it's just not Python, even though I love Python. There are other projects involved, like Julia is also another language sponsored by NumFocus. So now let's talk about things that you should not do, absolutely should not do. Do not ignore user feedback. They're the ultimate beneficiaries of your project, right? If a user gives you feedback, unless, if it's feasible and it makes sense for your roadmap or anything like that, you should definitely respond and don't ignore them, all right? Don't be too restrictive. Not a lot of rules, not a lot of requirements to be a contributor. That really discourage people to contribute to your project. Obviously, don't neglect your community. This is similar in vein to the ignore user feedback. So what ends up happening if you do this, there's the possibility of losing momentum. And as an open source project, the one thing that you have that's really valuable is the momentum of your project, right? You do not want to lose that momentum. You don't want to, because it's like a S curve, right? Once you have momentum, it grows really, really, really quickly. And so you don't want to lose that. And don't forget to plan for sustainability. This is where NumFocus could come in and help, like if you needed funding to do things. So you should be thinking about this, even when you're little, when you don't need money. The sustainability plan for us is simple. We have a board of directors on my project. We calculate all our expenses for the year. We divvy it up amongst the 8 people that are on the board, and we just pay for it that way, right? That's our sustainability plan. And it works for us. And this is, you should know, either I'm a scientist, and from what I've told you, you know I like to experiment. So don't be afraid to experiment, because experimentation leads to innovation, new ideas, and trying out new technologies. This is all important for this, so don't be afraid to experiment. So now I'm going to talk to each and every one of you here and tell you that if you ever thought about contributing to open source, you should do it, right? And I'm not just going to tell you, I'm going to tell you the benefits to do it. Let's talk from a very selfish point of view. Like, what are you going to gain from this? What I gained was I was able to build software development skills in a low-stress environment. Like, everyone's out there to help you, so you get to learn a lot. Learn to build a maintainable project, right? This is a cool benefit. And just being a part of the open source software community is a big thing. Simple, submit a pull request for your favorite project. My project is called Yellowbrick. You can do a pull request on any of the affiliated projects from NumFocus, Pandas, Matplotlib, those type of things. So now, the benefits of having an active and engaged community. On the left-hand side, this is a sprint that we had at PyCon, and we had over 30 people in this sprint, and we did 17 pull requests. It was a really, really so that's exciting. Plus, you get to meet cool people. So so now the creator of Python, which we email quite frequently with each other now, because I met him at a conference doing exposure work for our project. But this is me meeting him. So you get to meet cool people. All right. So, and that's it. Thank you. And go to lawrencegray.com. The slides are available there for download, and you can just get them there. So any questions?
Hello.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm just wondering, for NumFocus, how much of your time goes into fundraising and like how challenging that is?
Well, we have an entire, NumFocus, this entire fundraising team. It takes a lot of effort in order to maintain it. I would say a good deal of time is split between hosting conferences and fundraising. And you know, as you can imagine, it's been hard economic times to get people to give you money right now. So a lot of effort is still being put into that. But we do have dedicated staff just that does fundraising.
Cool. Does it come mostly from corporate or like nonprofits or?
So the CZI, I don't know if Zuckerberg.
Oh yeah.
So we have funding from them, which is a nonprofit. We do get corporate sponsorship, depending. So it just kind of comes from a little bit of everywhere.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
Did you ever reconnect with Johnny?
No, I'm sorry. Maybe he would show up. Yeah.
So how do you handle like bike shedding, or when basically when people like argue a lot about stuff that like the less it matters, the more vehemently people argue about it?
Yeah, we've had this discussion several times. I think for us, we have a bit benevolent dictator that's solved our problems, and we've done it because we trust. It's actually two. We have two dictators, and we trust them both. And so to get around a lot of those types of issues, we just put it on their backs to make the final decision on those.
And when they disagree?
So I think they've kept their disagreements like behind the curtain because I have yet to see them disagree.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
So there's a lot to do. How do you do it sustainably? How do you maintain balance and keep going?
Use the semester system. Really take breaks, because when I first got started, if I wasn't doing my regular job, I was doing open source, and quickly burn out from that. So the answer is to develop some sort of sustainable system that watches out for people, so that they don't get into that trap, because it's fun. It's like really energizing to be able to produce something that others will use, and you're doing it because you're just passionate about it. There's no external reward that you're going to get. So, yes.
Have you had to deal with controversial pull requests? Like maybe something that is an interesting idea, but like goes against the grain of the project?
Well, this is an interesting story. So if there's anyone joining us from the UK, in my project, it's a visualization project where we generate images of machine learning model performance. So you can just see the performance in a visualization, right? And in order to call that, we would say ... poof, P-O-O-F, right? Sounds like, we're Yellowbrick. Sounds like the Wizard of Oz, right? Never thought about that. Well, in the UK, it doesn't have the same meaning. And so it took a lot to deal with that, because you're like, why would I, this is an innocent word, why would I change it? And also recognizing that so we ended up changing it, but it took a lot of conversation to do something like that. So we've entered those types of instances also. Yeah.
So I can remember the first pull request I ever submitted open source 13 years ago, and it got rejected.
Oh.
Lots changed since then. But what would you say to somebody or some people in here that are maybe scared or afraid?
Yeah. So what would I, this is so weird because one of our number one models is be kind, right? So if someone submitted a pull request that just didn't work out, I personally would work with them to actually look at what it is that what they're trying to accomplish and figure out a way to make it so. I think I'm sorry that you had such a bad experience. But for those that are scared, try simple pull requests, right? Try something that doesn't involve a lot of detail, just to get in to know the maintainers, and so that they begin to trust you, because they also are guardians of this code base. And so if you start off by submitting very small things, they will begin to trust you and see that. And so that's a way for you to kind of avoid just submitting a huge pull request and they just decide they're not going to look at it. I would never do that. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
So yeah, I'm still kind of fascinated about how you kept running into Johnny. And I thought it was cool how your friend thought it might be related to synchronicity, which literally a couple days ago I just learned about for the first time. It sounds like Carl Jung was doing a lot of research about it. But I'm curious if you have any theories or hypotheses about how the odds happened that you kept running into Johnny as this project.
So I have many more stories like this. So I don't know if I just, in some past life, I did some good things and I just happened to be able to do this. I really do not know, but there was a lot of good energy coming from Johnny. Like, he was a really, really nice person, very kind person. Like, it's someone that I would like to keep running into, right? So I don't have a good answer for you about that. My friend definitely, when she recorded that, I heard that. I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. So,
Cool.
Yes.
Do you have any, sorry, that was off initially. Do you have any words for people who maybe they've hit the burnout phase in a project and they don't know how to move forward with it, but they want the project to live on, for them to kind of manage that away from themselves and relieve themselves of their responsibility, but keep it alive? Because I think we've seen examples where this has been, like, big key infrastructure things carry so much responsibility, and that burns people out even faster, and then it's even worse when it doesn't go well, when they don't hand it off successfully.
Challenging question. I guess how to extract yourself from a plane that's flying okay when you're the pilot, right? Is that what I'm hearing? I don't know. You carry a parachute, and I don't think there's an answer beyond trying to prepare the team to fill your shoes. Like, I think that's the answer, but you have to make sure that you're not trapped into that, because what ends up happening, even though your love for this project is strong, there can be a sense of resentfulness that accompanies this extraction if you're not able to successfully sever the cord, right? So that's my response. Is there another talk? I'm sorry.
Yes. Do you have any thoughts on open source projects started by companies or, with strong?
Yeah, I think if done properly, they're quite successful. Like there are plenty of open source projects that are happening out of this, and we're seeing, I guess my thought is if it's truly open, right? That's the key word here, is if these projects are closed to a certain extent that, because we do see that. We have projects that are open source in Word, but you really can't go in, anyone can't go in and change the code. So my response would be, I'm all for corporate open source projects if they're truly open. Yes.
You mentioned finances. There's reimbursement for expenses, but there's also like reimbursement for time. Do you do that? Like, I can't, it seems improbable that like we could pay the people on our project anything like what we make in our jobs.
Oh, no even. There's no way anyone's getting paid anywhere close.
So you're just making sure people don't lose money when you talk about sponsorship?
No, for those, sponsorship is fiscal sponsorship, which is, there's a legal term here. Fiscal sponsorship means something completely different. It means like overseeing finances, because a lot of these projects are so big, they receive grants, they receive other forms of outside money from companies, and they need a way in order to manage those incoming funds. And so whenever we talk about fiscal sponsorship, we're talking about someone actually doing the overhead work to manage your finances.
Thanks.
So my experience in open source is we have a pretty distinct problem with diversity. We know that software is already way more male than the general population and way whiter, and then as we go into open source, it just gets worse. We could probably talk about this for hours, but like, why do you think that is? What's your perspective as a black man?
It takes a lot of effort and work to have a diverse project, right? So I'm lucky on my project, when we first started off, there was 8 of us. There was 5 women, a person, an Asian person, me, and a guy from Guyana, right? All on this team. So it was done. It was people were welcoming and brought in whoever wanted to work, right? And it was done very intentionally to nurture people from different backgrounds. It meant extra work sometimes because some people would come in with not the skills necessary, so it meant extra work. So the reason I just think overall there's just more, the population balances are just not, especially here in America, right? There are just not a lot of African Americans that are doing tech, right? They would like to do tech, so we need to do our best in order to nurture that population or that pipeline of people in order to get them more involved. But it's definitely a numbers game, but it's nowhere close to being the representation of the population, right? And so I don't know. I spent my entire life, I'm here because of diversity programs. Literally, whenever I was in college, there were programs that were targeted toward getting people from socioeconomic disadvantaged people into PhD programs, and it's very deliberate, right? And so without those types of programs being very deliberate, you're going to see this type of imbalance in between the different groups. But it takes a lot. It's not. I'm not just saying you can flip a switch. It takes a lot of effort, to do this. So, does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about it some more because it fascinates me. It seems like a huge problem and something that I've had so many benefits myself from open source, but I've had immense privilege in my life as well. I've had a lot of spare time where I could spend it coding for free, and I think not everybody enjoys that privilege, and I wish everybody could get the same benefits that I've had from it, but I don't know, it feels like a problem for the whole of society, right?
We're cutting it. Like he's giving me this signal.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.